Very, very simple calculation that you can do at home. So why I get clients to do it, I should probably start with, is obviously hydration is a really important part of your performance. Even 2% dehydration can lead to sort of up to 20% poorer performance. So it's often one of those parts of sports nutrition that people don't take as seriously. It's, I'll drink when I'm thirsty. We always want to have a bit of a solid plan around how much fluid you'll be taking on board.
Are you dehydrated by the time you drink when you're thirsty?
Most likely.
Okay.
Yeah. So look, where I start is using a training session. So this is obviously for both training and racing, but we always start with a training session. So I would typically ask my athlete to choose, it's very easy when we do it for an hour session, and I'm just going to use as an example to make it easy. But if we can choose 1 hour session, but at race pace, because there's no point doing, particularly when preparing for an event, there's no point doing it in a really easy, slow ride because obviously your sweat rate's going to be a lot lower.
Yes.
So we're trying to calculate out your sweat rate. Let's say it's an hour session. You weigh before, you don't take any fluid on during that hour, and then you weigh after. If you're a really heavy sweater, I'd also try and do it in the nude if you can, so that you're not weighing your clothes and sweaty clothes, because that's obviously going to impact.
Don't do the session in the nude.
Don't do the
on the
session
road.
in the nude.
Yeah, okay.
I
saw someone doing that the other day, and it was you, wasn't it, that prescribed it?
No, not before and after. So let's say they're 70 kilos. And they jump on, and then afterwards they're 68 kilos. It means they've lost 2 kilos or 2 litres over that hour.
Okay.
Now, if they have consumed 500 mils, then it's going to be 2.5 that they've lost.
Okay.
So it's easier when you do an hour session and you don't have any fluid.
And there's no real risk there in terms of your health by doing it for 1 hour?
Oh, look, if it's 1 hour, it's okay. But as long as you're hydrated at the start of that, but absolutely you can start drinking fluid over that 1 hour. If it was more than an hour, then I would say definitely worthwhile taking it. But just for ease of sake of doing these sessions, or just be making sure that you're willing to measure how much fluid you're having. So if you're drinking 333 mils, that's absolutely important that you understand how much you've drunk, not just sort of guessing it.
Okay.
So once we've got that figure, so let's say it's 2 litres that you've lost over that hour, the goal then is to replace about 50% of that per hour. So it means that we want to have 1 litre per hour. That's a significant amount for a 70 kilo athlete, so keep that in mind. That's probably someone who's living in a very hot, humid temperature.
Wow, 1 litre per hour.
Yes, is what we're aiming for, so at least 50% of that. So this...
How much, which is a normal size drink bottle?
Yep.
Is that about 500 or 700 mil?
I would say that's about 600 to 700.
Okay, 600 to 700.
Yep.
So is therefore aiming for 1 bottle an hour okay, or not quite enough?
So this is where we want to practice it a number of times. What I will do with my clients is always choosing a race pace session if we can, but also doing it a couple of times over different seasons and different sessions so that we get a bit of an average, because that particular day that you chose, we're assuming that the weather is going to be exactly the same on that day. So we want to make sure we're doing it at different temperatures. So you can get some cold days, some hot days, some humid days, some very low humidity days, because your sweat rate is going to change. Keep in mind, ideally we want to do it on an outside training session, because your sweat rate is going to be a lot higher on an inside session because we don't have wind associated with it. So trying to replicate race conditions as much as possible and over a number of different conditions. Then get your average sweat rate, or have a couple of different ones, so that on race day, if you rock up and you're expecting it to be 32 degrees and 90% humidity, but it happened to be a 27 degree day and an 80% humidity, you're going to have a little bit of data there to show you, hey, my sweat rate on a very hot, heavy day was 1.75 litres per hour. I'm going to aim for 50% of that, versus your cooler temperature days, it was actually only 1 litre per hour. So I'm going to aim for 500 mils of fluid per hour.
Let's just say you do this test and you've got a low sweat rate, so you're not sweating much, even in hot temperatures. Is that a good thing? Like, does that mean you don't have to drink as much?
Just means you don't have to drink as much. Your requirements are lower.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's still important to, listen to your thirst and listen to that. But it does mean if you're sweating less, then your requirement it will be to drink less.
And if you're sweating a lot, and I'm sure you've seen this, and it's almost unrealistic to consume, the amount of fluids to keep up with your sweat rate, what do you do?
So your preparation leading into that training session or that event becomes very, very important, so that you're very well hydrated, and you may use sodium and other electrolytes to get you there. But I would recommend that for everyone leading into an event anyway, that by the time you're on start line, that you're very hydrated. there's products that help sort of hyperhydrate as well.
Okay, like what?
Glycerol is an example.
Okay, yep.
And there's a particular product called Prepped, which actually helps sort of draw more water into the body as well. Prepped.
Okay,
yeah, is another product that does that as well. So those are definitely performance supplements that people can use to hyperhydrate leading in particular events, particularly if they know that it's a very hot, humid event, and maybe they've been training in a cooler environment, or they're just getting ready to reduce the impacts of dehydration, knowing that they just can't consume enough fluid over that event.
Okay. And with the intake of fluid, like should they just be drinking 2 bottles of water? Should one bottle be sports drink and the other bottle be water? Should both bottles be sports drinks? Is it variable?
And that's very, very dependent on the person. Something to keep in mind is that sodium, which is the main electrolyte that will support hydration, is important for absorption as well. Okay. And same with carbohydrates. So
why does everyone go on about magnesium then? You're saying sodium's important?
Old
school
advice. Yeah.
Okay, right.
Yeah. But we know now that sodium is typically, magnesium is still important, but sodium is the product that, is the electrolyte that will typically aid hydration and dehydration. So if people are muscle cramping, for example, during an event, they'll typically add magnesium in, but it's typically the sodium content that is being lost, that's as well as the level of dehydration or fluid loss that's causing a muscle cramp. So most of your products that you'll find, that's why salt tablets are purely just sodium chloride, and it's the sodium that's having the impact. So coming back to on the bike though, is I usually get my clients to have at least 1 bottle of fluid, because most sports nutrition products are very sweet, and it's great to have a bit of a mouth rinse every now and then and just rely
1 bottle of water, you mean?
1 bottle of water, sorry.
Yes, right.
And then 1 bottle of sports drink, or multiple bottles of sports drink, and then 1 bottle of plain water.
Yes, okay.
If your carbohydrate requirement allows that.
Yep.
If you have a really high carbohydrate requirement, we may have to use all bottles as sports drink. But yeah, ideally if we can have 1 bottle of water, a couple of bottles of sports drink, and then keeping in mind that we want to take into consideration your sodium and carbohydrate requirement as well.
Have you had any clients where they just really struggle with events and they can't get through it, and they've done this test and recognise that they've got a really high sweat rate, and then they've increased their fluid and it's basically changed
Absolutely. Yeah, okay. Absolutely. Because often with those sort of clients, they're not getting enough fluid in, they're not getting enough carbohydrates in as a result, because they're having to take too many other products. It's just really difficult. But more often than not, they're probably cramping at some point, or their muscles are under a lot of fatigue. So I think it's been a big game changer. And I've got a particular RCA member that I'm thinking about at the moment. The hydration plan has been such a positive impact on their performance, not only in training, but in racing. Reduced, all muscle cramps, or eliminated all muscle cramps, but has definitely improved their performance just by sort of targeting their hydration plan.